The Happy Skies Week 5 stand-up, February the 12th, 2016. Okay, so why don't we start going around the room, everybody say what they got done today. We'll start with Laurel over there.
I basically just did landmark descriptions for about, I want to say 7 or 8 of them, and be doing the rest of those for next week.
Completed 2 zones today, made 2 prefabs, almost got 3 done. I got Mount Everest, China, and almost Japan finished. So I should be able to get Japan finished before we meet up next class. And what else were we supposed to talk about? Wasn't it what went right, what went wrong for the last 5 weeks?
Yeah. We can just start with today and then we can go over
Okay.
what went right and wrong.
I did the generation of the levels and the zones and working with tying them into the parallax so that they work properly. And that's about it.
I worked on the asset spawning for the forward ground assets, working on preventing them from overlapping and getting with the new prefabs for the desert, kind of testing them in the environment right now. So
I did a bunch of TerraSec stuff and touch input feedbacks and most done.
So then I went through and I did the Friday member interview. Got some more interviews already drafted, some in shorthand that I can then draft in a bit, as well as some photos. On the design side, I went through and I took all of the new art assets that primarily Molly and some of what Kelly did, and oriented them how we needed them to be to implement them into Unity, and then implemented them into Unity. And then went through Axosoft and kind of checked off what's been completed and what hasn't, as well as updating the GDD with the art assets. And then next week, continue a lot of that with creation of art asset lists that we will need to do for other terrains that we haven't touched yet. Then Butler.
Butler. What's your opinion?
So today I spent most of my time trying to get all my files synchronized properly because Git is a pain in the butt. But other than that, now I'm going back through the layer system since it's changed some and reconfiguring all the previous stuff that I've done and fixing all that so it works properly.
Yeah, so in the future, if you guys need a new layer for something, add a new layer instead of changing the old ones, so that way we don't run into issues where Butler is using one layer and
What do you
then
mean changing it from when?
so if you're assigning a certain layer to something and you need a specific layer, so say for whatever reason we need another parallax layer and you need to put everything on a certain layer, instead of using one of the ones that we currently have going, go ahead and build a new one.
Oh, so you mean the parallax layers?
Well, you use layers for anything. He's using them for character powers, or we have.
Well, are you
layers set
talking
for
about the
collision.
collision layers?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
the
that
physical
got
layers.
those got overwritten by Git. I think that just has to do with because it's in the project settings. So I think Git is having a hard time knowing, but it should work now because now everybody's using the same collision matrix should be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it falls under the tag asset system, even though it's tags and layers. So that if it says in the files tag .asset file or whatever, that also includes the layer system. And I had several conflicts with it. So I'm just, instead of making it harder on y'all, I'll make it harder on me because I'm just a lowly little grunt at that matter. But no. It's easier for me to go through and fix everything than it would be for y'all to try to implement something that y'all don't fully understand it from my side stuff. So.
Okay. And then we can go into what Jonathan mentioned, the what things went right and what things went wrong in these last 5 weeks for this particular milestone sprint. So if anybody has anything that comes to mind, just go ahead and speak up about it.
Pick a voxel.
Huh?
Pick a voxel.
Please.
Yeah.
Wanted to implement it I mean, it would've looked cool if we could do it, but, no, just no.
Yeah, ended up being a real pain.
That, and I know, I don't want to use any names, but we had one team member that John, myself, and Donald all tried to like help out with getting their work straightened out, and we ended up wasting a lot of time trying to get that in order.
Yeah.
That was something that I know set me back a bit.
Yeah, on the pick-a-voxel thing, that's just, it's a concept we tried to do and it didn't work out. And the other thing, that's just the realities of being in the production class and trying to just, get a team together. Sometimes you get some rotten apples.
Right, but for the next 5 weeks, we at least all have our planning out and know what we need to do. So this next 5 weeks is going to be really good for us. So.
Yeah, I would definitely say like we've got the groundwork that we need to just kind of take off now.
Mm-hmm.
Like-
The first 5 weeks was planning and making sure
Yeah.
like what we were going to do, concepting out,
Mhm.
now
That and
set the thing that we're going to do. So.
these last 2 weeks alone, like we've, thanks to Molly especially, she's done a ton of art assets, and Kelly's been doing her fair share of them. And then I don't know what the other artist is or whatever, but I haven't seen any of his that I've had to deal with because I've been working with the terrain assets between those two.
Yeah.
But like just from theirs alone, like we've gotten a lot more assets implemented. Like today I had finished uploading, it's like 30 or 40 some assets, so
Yeah. So it's really only for the online students, between Bucklaw and Butler. I put their names together.
Bucklaw.
It's between those two that we've got stuff that we're actually using, like her assets or Butler's scripts. Stubbs is new to programming, maybe, because he's listed on Lynn's sheet as a designer, not as a programmer. So maybe there was a miscommunication, because everything he told me, it was all like programming experience. So I'll talk to him again and make sure that programming is what he wants to be doing. And if then it'll just be, he's newer to it. And he's somebody in his house. And on Blaylock's side, I just got correspondence back like yesterday or the day before, so we're gonna try and improve communication there to actually get some of those GUI stuff. I think, yeah, for the most part, what you guys said, that's right. We wasted a little bit of time with pick-a-voxel and sorting everything out. But now we're good for the next couple of weeks. So for week 10, I've got 3 things written down, just like for my own, like this is what I would think we would want to have done. Would be zone generation, fully functional and working. So that includes the background stuff. That includes having the foreground assets spawning, and that includes having landmarks popping up somewhere in the middle ground. And then also having all of Butler's powers connected to some sort of character prefab. So if we have the art assets then connected to that specific character, and if not, we can just throw in a generic empty basket and at least have each prefab for the character set up, so that way we can all set it into the character slot. But, so what do each of you guys think we should be having in addition to that for the week 10 goals? First person to talk and start.
I know for myself, I would just like to get all the zones completed and tested and working by week 10, and I think that's pretty reasonable.
Okay. So
Like have fleshed out zones, because right now they're still kind of in that between where they have crappy assets and all
Yeah.
that. So.
Just get them working and then polish it off for the last 5 weeks. So if we can get them just done by week 10, and then we'll be in good stretch for the last 5.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Everyone's pretty much got the features covered that need to be covered. So I was probably going to move on to all the monetizing and unlockable aspects.
Make sure we make a profit on this thing.
Pick your character, pick your power, pick your basket. Just depending on how much art we get.
Yeah. I think our main pitfall is going to end up being art. Because Molly right now is the only one working on the 3D models, and we're just going to have her focus on keep working on the background assets and the foreground assets, and then ultimately the last of the landmarks that we need made. So that's gonna kind of leave us with a pitfall of, we don't have anybody to work on enemy character assets any more characters than we currently have. And then assets for things like power-ups and power-downs. And then also if we wanna replace any of the GUI. And then the other big thing, which would be animations, which I know Johnson could pick up some of the slack on, but we've probably got like enough animations for like a team of 3 artists to be doing full-time.
Well, the animations for the characters themselves are gonna be kinda easy.
Yeah.
Cause all you do is override the default animator and rename it. So that should be every character down the board should be made exactly the same, except for maybe like the shark.
Mhm.
But, cause that has a fishbowl
Yeah.
and he comes out differently. That should be like the only one that I could think of that will require,
Probably the snake too, because he's got the tail.
his is done already.
Yeah. But
Yeah, he's done. So then that leaves, power up animation and enemy, or
Yeah.
the problem children. For that aspect. Cause everything else, even once you do like the main enemy,
Mhm.
that should be able to override animation controller and get the rest.
Yeah. And then also the landmark animations. So for the little like
Yeah.
the fish boat bobbing, just things in the background and foreground actually moving and being alive to make the game seem, you know, not so flat. The Parallax has gone a long way for that regard, but we could also definitely use just, you know, little ambient animations and just things like that.
Yeah, I really like the directional light shadow. But with that, I was noticing we also have to make sure some of the assets are closer to the background. So their shadow isn't going object, the background object, you can see it, and then the shadow, there's some
Yeah.
spots in that.
Yeah, I saw that on the list.
Johnson was fixing a few of those.
Yeah.
That'll also, on a few objects like Everest and such, where they're very far apart, once we actually get those fixed and they're much closer, that'll be less of an issue.
Yeah.
Cause then it'll just be casting a shadow, won't be casting a shadow and
Well,
having a bunch of space.
Don't forget on some of the stuff, you can turn cast and shadow off
Yeah.
on that stuff, on some of the stuff too.
Well, it's based on the light, not on the object.
No, some of it you can.
Any?
Yeah, you should be able to go in by, a layer or a tag and do it.
Yeah, but, it's between us and Deadliest War for, the next, like, I guess team assignments, cause there might be some people going back into like the pool of people that we can grab, just from what teams, don't need, and some of them really don't want, so it'll also be a crapshoot. I don't know if there's gonna be any real,
We're us and Deadliest were the only ones searching for artists.
yeah, so, and I think they might get an artist before we do, cause they're the client team. So hopefully we can get an artist or two, but I wouldn't hold your breath on it.
We should, the pool's like 15 people, 20 people, something like that.
Well, a lot of it is, people just transferring over from the previous class. The pool's mainly, like, I think it's gonna be mainly comprised of like, if a team has somebody they don't need and can't give tasks to, and then people who are getting kicked off teams. But they're leaving that second half of people to not be named. They're just, cause they're trying to get it to where like, we hear about a crappy person that got kicked off another team, and they don't want that happening, so we're like, oh no, we don't want that person, cause it gets hard to
That's already
place those
started.
people. Yeah. But so, besides, all that stuff, I also think we need to have, our GUI stuff a little better fleshed out. So like right now, we've got like a main menu and a character select, and all our other screens are pretty blank. That's kind of, again, an issue of having more art, but also linking it to the functionality of like the travel log and, having that more in-depth character select, and also the storefront. So a lot of that's gonna be on, the storefront stuff, but there's also a little more GUI that needs to be handled.
Yeah, I was thinking we should probably get rid of that map and just do, animated background from the game. Just
Weren't you
have-
working on that?
Yeah, it's as we get landmark assets, I throw more
Yeah.
assets onto it, but
It doesn't really fit the overall. But more look.
if we could get a bunch of art to make the buttons and stuff, you know, like fit to it, then it'd be fine, but as it stands, the buttons we have, if we have to use those, then the animated background from the
Yeah,
game
well-
would work better.
Those buttons are just pulled right from the internet.
I thought they were open use.
They are, but they're not stylized to our game,
Yeah.
so.
But again, it's an issue of do we have an artist to do it?
But I was able to grab those, so everything is just, really, you can actually just drag the folder in and rename it the same thing, and it'll update the whole GUI,
Yeah.
so.
And I can also take a crack at it if we don't have any other artists to touch it. I can take a crack at trying to do the GUI buttons. I've done them in the past. It's just it takes me like 5 hours to do one where it takes an artist 30 minutes.
Yeah, the problem is all the cute buttons you can pull from Asset Store or whatever, they're all cartooned out.
Yeah.
Ours is construction paper. So you might be able to actually pull a GUI and then go into Photoshop and take off the line.
Effects.
Yeah, the lining effects.
Generally speaking, they don't throw you the PSVs.
Yeah, that's you just go and hit the erase button.
That's a little more intensive than it sounds.
It's a lot faster than making them by hand every 5 hours.
Let's see what I can do about that. And then, so Butler, you can continue working on landmark events. That way you're not stepping on those guys' toes and they're not stepping on your toes.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to mention that you are aware that I'm done with the Game Production Studios series of classes, right?
Yeah, but you said you were
Okay.
gonna continue working on it since you were gonna use it for your SIP.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recognize it's not gonna be the 30 hours a week, but
Yeah.
When's your,
I just wanted you to be aware, just so you weren't just like, what the fuck's all your work at? You've been dropping. You suck balls now. So,
when's your SIP presentation?
the class is in May, so it'll be a while.
Okay.
My semester all got, switched around and whatnot due to taking all these classes last year.
Because the last one we did for Greenlight is being released actually today. It's being submitted for review. So if everything goes to plan, Happy Skies should be probably submitted within a month after production class.
yeah, like to the market is what he means.
Yeah, like to the market. So,
Okay.
just give it that month for polish and random things that were lost, and all this stuff that gets lost in class.
Knick-Knack spent like 2 months after production. This policy.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But we're hoping to avoid, because Knickknacks ended up having that big.
Yeah, but we also avoided that problem in production class. The problem that happened with Knickknacks happened afterwards when we realized the art and some of the stuff just didn't fit at all.
Yeah.
That's what ruined Knickknacks production time. We lost so much.
But that sounds pretty good to me for week 10 goals, having zone generation done, having all the zones completed, having the character cards connected, monetization unlocks, having some of the GUI touches and buttons redone, and then having at least more of the landmark events, if not all of them. And then what's our Facebook and Twitter at?
So our Facebook is at, I want to say it's just under, like barely under, like 1 or 2 people under 70. And this last week our Twitter has gained like, I want to say it was 10 new followers, so it's up to like 41 now. For some reason Twitter's just taking off. It's kind of, I've been sticking to the traditional kind of pattern of it all. I think it's just now finally like catching the eyes of the right people at the right time kind of thing.
So Facebook goal, I want like 100 people like the page.
If you have time, like go in and share anything that pertains to you, like on your Facebook and your Twitter. I know when you shared your interview, you had like what, 300 views? Possibly.
So yeah, like
328 last I saw it.
when we post your interviews, be sure to share them on your accounts because people are going to want to see what we say about you. And then it also brings eyes to our page itself, which gives us the necessary foot traffic that we really need. Also, if you post something that is related to Happy Skies, just let me know and I'll be sure to like share it, retweet it, whatever. Because like the more that you do that interacts with us, the more that we can interact with other people.
So I think that kind of wraps it up, unless anybody else has anything else to add. Yeah, so that's the kind of our week 10 goals, and hopefully we can get some good art pumping and take the pressure off Molly.
Can we get a bigger corner for week 10, so we're not running into each other?
Let's talk to school operations, that's them, dude. Okay, that wraps it up.
Yeah, being officially done with knickknacks today, I don't have to do as much Terrasec work on Fridays anymore.